So I'm really pleased to be here, and I know that Yossi and Steffi has invited me the last 4 years, and I finally was able to convince my family to come with me. So, how many folks here have heard about X Prize? I just want to get a sense for this audience. So about a third of you. So I'll give a little bit of an update of what I'm doing at the X Prize Foundation, and then how that's led me to a concept called abundance, which I'm thrilled about. So let me begin. Back that up. So we're living in an extraordinary time and age where technology is making individuals able to do what only governments and large corporations could do before. If you think about the democratization of the power that individuals have literally to touch the lives of 1 billion people that never existed, and I know all of you know that because in your lives, in your companies, in your dreams, that is what each of us are doing. So my dream when I was a child was to go into space. It was something I was born in the 60s, and I was coming into consciousness while Apollo was coming online and while Star Trek was going on. And I believed that if NASA and the Soviet space programs had continued, we'd be on Mars by now. But the fact of the matter is that governments gave up because they became so risk adverse. And in fact, to really drive breakthroughs, true breakthroughs in the world, take extraordinary risks. Because the day before something is truly a breakthrough, it's a crazy idea. And unfortunately, in governments today, they've stopped taking big risks because they're worried about a congressional investigation or whatever it might be, and even large corporations have stopped taking big risks. In fact, most of the innovation comes from small companies. And I was passionate about spaceflight and realized that my chances of going into space through NASA were 1 in 1,000, maybe 1 in 1,000,000. I had probably a better chance of becoming a basketball star than I did a NASA astronaut. And so I read about incentive prizes, and I'll just give you a little bit of background. And in 1996, launched a $10 million competition, for those of you who have not heard about the X Prize, for the first team to build a private spaceship that could carry 3 adults up into space, land safely, and do it again within 2 weeks. And believe me, everybody laughed at this idea, said it was impossible, it cannot be done. Everyone said, why isn't NASA doing it? Can anyone really pull it off, and isn't someone going to die? And consequently, it took me 5 years to raise the $10 million, but ultimately, it was a $10 million competition for the start of a new industry. And this competition worked against all the odds. And this slide showed we had 26 teams around the world. And what was amazing about the idea of crowdsourcing the kind of breakthrough that you want, which is at the fundamental core of sort of the vision of where I see things going, teams can come in and come up with very novel solutions. We had 26 teams from 7 countries who spent $100 million to try and win this $10 million prize. And they tried every single possible approach to going into space. Vertical takeoff, horizontal takeoff, liquid, solid, hybrid engines, behind an airplane, above an airplane, below an airplane, using a balloon first stage, helicopter first stage. It was an incredible sort of Darwinian evolution of trying new launch technologies. And ultimately, this vehicle, Spaceship One, it's now hanging in the Air and Space Museum, won the competition. Richard Branson, after turning me down twice for funding the original competition, came in and bought the rights to license it and created Virgin Galactic. That's why he's Richard Branson. But these competitions are incredibly effective as an economic tool. You put up a $1 million prize or a $10 million prize, and you can drive 10 to 40 times the amount of money spent by the world trying to solve your problem. And as Bill Joy from Kleiner said, the majority of the smart people in the world don't work for you. They work for someone else. So if you can tap that cognitive surplus, it's extraordinarily efficient. And the best part about these incentive competitions are that you get non-traditional solutions. Because the experts typically are the people who can tell you exactly how something can't be done. And they're stuck in the way they're thinking. And in fact, many experts, if you think about it, are invested in keeping things the way they are because that's what made them famous in the first place. So coming in with a brand new solution that's really a breakthrough isn't what they really want to push. So these competitions work. We ended up building a board of trustees who have backed these competitions, some incredible folks who are interested in the world's biggest problems and having huge leverage to try and drive these things forward. So we now do prizes in 4 areas. In life sciences, exploration, we've just partnered with Shell. Energy environment, we've partnered with Cisco. And education, global development. And some of the competitions we have going on, this is Craig Venter, who in 2001 sequenced his genome. He spent $100 million and a year of time doing it. And what we've done is we've challenged teams to sequence 100 human genomes in 10 days for less than $1,000 each. And ultimately, that's a 365 million-fold improvement in a decade that we're asking them to do. What we just announced is that we're asking teams to sequence the genomes of 100 healthy centenarians and then open source that data so that we can actually find out what are the genes for longevity that exist. This is about starting the trend for getting the data out there and really allowing the mining of the data to really drive breakthroughs in how we do healthcare in the future. In partnership with Google, we've launched the $30 million Google Lunar X Prize, and all you have to do to win is build a robot, land it on the surface of the moon, send back photos and videos, and rove a half a kilometer. Now, it's such an important prize that NASA's matched that with $30 million. And Google's interest is really, how do we incentivize the next generation of scientists and engineers and really open up the economic sphere of influence of humanity beyond low Earth orbit to the moon and beyond. But imagine, if you would, where a team of 20 individuals, we have now 26 teams, can build a robot and land it on the surface of the moon. That, we think, is possible over the next 4 years, with the span of the competition. Last year, we ran, if you remember the BP oil spill that was going on and on and on, it turns out that the technology for cleaning up that oil spill had been the same for 20 years, hadn't changed. So Wendy Schmidt, Eric's wife, who runs the Family Foundation, put up a $1.4 million competition to reinvent how you clean up oil spills. Well, we had the facilities that were given to us by the US State Department here. We had 350 teams around the world who entered the competition. 10 finalists went head-to-head. They had to exceed 1,100 gallons per minute of oil cleanup. The winning team actually quadrupled it. We had 4 times the improvement. And I love the fact that one of the teams who actually doubled the existing standards for the last 20 years met in a Las Vegas tattoo parlor. And the technology that they tested had never seen an oil spill ever before it was in this facility. I mean, this is the idea of crowdsourcing to a group that comes outside the industry and the incredible breakthroughs that they can do. One of my favorite competitions, today, if you go to the doctor, 45% of the time, you get the wrong diagnosis or the wrong course of treatment. In the US, it takes 21 days on the average to get a doctor's appointment. By 2020, we're going to be short 91,000 physicians in the United States, and that's good compared to the rest of the world. So what we've done in partnership with Qualcomm, and we announced it at the keynote for the CES, Paul Jacobs, was a $10 million Qualcomm Tricorder X Prize. We're challenging teams to basically combine lab-on-a-chip, AI, digital imaging, and cloud computing on a mobile device that you can cough on, do a finger blood prick, talk to, and can diagnose you better than a team of board-certified doctors. So this is coming online, we think, in the next 3.5 years. Where are we going next? This is our competition called Auto. We're hoping to get this funded this year. This would be a man versus machine competition, the first autonomous car to beat the best human drivers ever, the best Formula One, NASCAR drivers, New York cabbies, in a head-to-head competition. This is something that's a half funded so far. It's reinventing how you do carbon capture. This would challenge teams to hook up to the smokestack of a coal plant and capture the CO2, and the team that creates the most valuable products while still capturing 80% of the CO2 wins the competition, turning, if you would, the cost of capturing CO2 into a profit center. So we're looking at competitions in food, water, health, education, energy, all of these things. And what I learned out of this was that we are living in a time where we can solve all of our problems. And in fact, The concept is that if you look at the needs of humanity, food, water, shelter, energy, education, health, freedom, I believe that in our next generation, we are going to be creating a world of abundance, where we will be able to meet the needs of every man, woman, and child on this planet. So why do I believe that? Why do most people disbelieve it? If you look at the data, really look at the data, over the last 100 years, the human life expectancy has increased 100%. Infant mortality has decreased 90%. Maternal mortality has decreased 99%. The cost of electricity is 20-fold down, transportation 100-fold, communications 1,000-fold. Someone living in the middle of Africa on a mobile phone has got better mobile comm than the President of the United States did 25 years ago. And if they're living on Google, they've got access to more information and knowledge than the President did 15 years ago. They're living in a world of information and communication abundance. If you look at Americans below the poverty line, I don't know the numbers for Germany or for Europe, 99% of electricity, a flushing toilet, refrigerator, television, mobile phones, air conditioning, cars. These individuals have access to better technology than the wealthiest people 100 years ago, the kings and queens did. But yet they're below the poverty line. We keep moving that poverty line, but yet we don't notice that happening. Technology can turn what was scarce into something abundant. My favorite example comes in the court of Napoleon. In the 1840s, Napoleon invited the King of Siam to dinner. All of his staff ate with silver utensils. Napoleon and his staff and his court ate with gold utensils. But the King of Siam was fed with aluminum utensils. You see, aluminum in 1840 was the scarcest metal on the planet. Even though the Earth is not 8.8% aluminum, it's all bound as oxides and silicates. And it was so scarce, it was worth more than gold and platinum. Until the technology of electrolysis came along and made it so abundant that we now throw it away without thinking about it. Technology can take what was scarce and make it abundant. So what do I mean by that? If you look at these things which I list as important for life, we talked about that cell phones are making communications and information abundant worldwide, right? Look at the penetration increase, 2%, 28%. By the end of 2012, 70% penetration of cell phones around the world, information and communications abundance. This is probably one of the most important curves I've thought about. This is green is the population of the Earth, 6 billion in 2000, growing to just over 7 billion by 2020. The red is internet penetration, 6%, 23%, growing to 66%. What does this mean? It means that in the next 8 years, we're going from 2 billion to 5 billion people connected. These are 3 billion new minds plugged in to the global economy. What will these people create? What will they consume? What will they discover? What will they innovate? What will they do that will improve your life? This will be an economic infusion like we've never seen before. We are at the knee of the curve of this, but yet I don't hear people talking about that. We are transforming this planet right now. The global brain is more than doubling in size in the next 8 years. So energy. We live in a 16 terawatt energy world. We think about energy scarcity. On the planet Earth, 6,000 times more energy hits the planet every year than we consume. Just like aluminum, it's about converting it from something that was scarce into something abundant. We talk about water wars, but yet we live on a water planet, 70% covered by water. The technology that will take what was bound salt water and make it abundant for all. Healthcare and education, look at this, an $80 Android, beat only by a $35 tablet. The tools being allowed in the hands of individuals, 10 million of these tablets being distributed in India. We talked about global tricorder. So anyone with one of these devices, it's the village doctor. It's the thing that predicts a pandemic. So for me, we are living into a world of abundance. And I'd like to end this talk with a short video that my good friend Jason Silva created, inspired by this, just 90 seconds long. But it's the notion that you today are empowered to change the world. So if we play the video.
excited about Peter Diamandis and Stephen Kotler's new book, Abundance. Right off the bat, they explain this idea that technology is a resource-liberating mechanism, and that scarcity is actually contextual. Something is only scarce until you develop the technology that turns it into something abundant. They introduced this concept of exponential technological progress, and to explain this, they talk about 30 steps. If you take 30 linear steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 30 steps later, you're at 30. If you take 30 exponential steps, 2, 4, 8, 16, 30 steps later, you're at 1 billion. That's the reason that the cell phone in your pocket today is 1,000,000 times cheaper, 1,000,000 times smaller, and 1,000 times more powerful than a $60 million supercomputer was in the 1960s. That's the billion-fold increase in price and performance and miniaturization. You know, a young person with a cell phone in Africa today has access to better communications technology than the US president did 25 years ago. So it's this concept of exponential growth, right? And then you have the rising billion around the world, people coming online for the first time, buying smartphones, joining the global conversation. You have a new generation of techno-philanthropists, you know, people that have made billions of dollars in the information age. They have the resources of nation states and they want to transform the world. You have DIY innovators, you know, leveraging emerging technologies to impact the world in a positive way. And so the book ends up being a kind of really optimistic take on a possible path that we can take. We can leverage these emerging technologies that are evolving exponentially, and we can transform the world. It's up to us, and abundance shows us how.
Thank you, Jason. So I'll leave it with this message. The tools to create a world which is extraordinary are within our hands, every one of us today. And the forces at play are going to bring us there. Thank you.